This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about bribery in American dating customs, the digdas-to-dollar exchange rate, and how we'll never get sneezed on ever again. All that and more as we watch Season 2, Episode 4 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and joining me is my co-host and my brother. What's up, Imran?
What's up, Sophia? This week I am podcasting from my hypoallergenic bubble. I got some hand sanitizer and some wipes and a face mask.
Exactly the right way to join us today, because today we're talking about an episode, Season 2, Episode 4 of Perfect Strangers, called Ladies and Germs.
And you're, just to be clear for the listener, you are hundreds of miles away in your own safe bubble. We're not together.
We are not together. We are isolated in different cities, quarantining in different cities.
Yes, we cannot spread any kind of
There are
thing.
no droplets.
No droplets in the air. It's very dry, in fact.
Among us, yes.
Need a sip of water. Yes, Ladies and Germs, Season 2, Episode 4. Does this title have any significance, Sophia?
Yes, Ladies and Germs is, I believe, a nod to vaudeville comedian Milton Berle.
Yes, it is.
Who used to say this, greet his audience all the time. He used to say, "Good evening, ladies and germs." And then he would say, "I mean, ladies and gentlemen. I call you ladies and gentlemen, but you know what you really are."
Classic. I mean, old school. This is like the original insult comic, the original TV comic from the 50s. Legend. Apparently, I was doing some research. People used to shut down their businesses and put a sign, "Closed to watch Milton Berle. We'll be back later." Everybody was watching. So, and I love it. It's like the old Jack Benny, like, "Take my wife, please."
Yes.
From that, or the old Groucho Marx, where he meets a woman and he goes, "I love you. I want you to have my children. In fact, they're out in the car right now if you want them." If you had the TV guide back in 1986, you cracked it open. This week, the description would have read, "On the eve of a once-in-a-lifetime date with the woman of his dreams, Larry is willing to try anything to cure his cold, including one of Balky's Myposian remedies." Oh, I can't wait.
That's a bit of a false description, as we'll find out, because he's not, in fact, willing
Not in the beginning.
to try it
Not
until
initially.
later. But let's go through it. Act 1 opens at the apartment, and Balky is shining his shoes. He's singing and dancing. What is he singing?
Song alert right here, everybody. First song, Balky's singing "Freeway of Love," the big Aretha Franklin hit in the summer of
riding on a freeway.
1985. Do you remember that? I remember when that was huge. And the pink Cadillac was everywhere. Great party song in the mid-'80s. Summer party. Balky's doing a little dance and shining his shoes, and then Larry walks in all proud of himself with his chest puffed. Oh, he's got good news. He is full of himself just looking at his body language. He says, "Guess who has a date with Bonnie Kleinschmidt?"
And Balky goes, "Pat Sajak," which is so random.
That's not, he's just like, why not? Maybe. Very popular. Nope, it's Larry Appleton, Sophia. Larry Appleton, stud. He calls himself stud. Who is Bonnie Kleinschmidt?
She is the 4th runner-up, according to Larry, in the Miss Chicago Beauty Contest.
Oh, man.
So Larry's got a hot date with a beauty contest, 4th runner-up. A very beautiful woman, presumably. But Balky reminds him, "Isn't this the woman that laughs in your face every time you asked her out?" And Larry says, "Not this time." He's got a plan. He has 2 tickets to the Bruce Springsteen concert.
Also big in the 80s. And then we get a great Balky expression. He does his impressive, "Wow."
Wow.
He's like, "So that's how you get dates? You bribe them?"
It's a method, Larry says. And again, we're learning more about Balky's education into American customs in terms of dating. Is like, oh, you just bribe them.
Larry has told Balky to like lie to women and then bribe them. It's like how you attract women in the 80s. Can we pause for a second? Because he's all hot about Bonnie Kleinschmidt. What happened to Jennifer?
I know. Remember when he was all, I want Jennifer. She is mine.
Yeah, he said we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. I must have her. She's on the softball team. And all of a sudden, he's already forgot about Jennifer.
Yeah, but remember, in the 80s, these shows came up once every week. People didn't remember they could get away with stuff like that.
I'm sure he'll get back to Jennifer later. So Balky is happy for Larry. He's got this big date, but informs him, look, cousin, we got to go. It's time to go to the hospital to visit Twinkasetti. Twinkasetti broke his leg and is in the hospital, but Larry is not going because he doesn't want to risk getting sick before his big date. Because why? Because hospitals, they're filled with germs, Sophia.
But Balky has some trouble with the language here, and he says, what germs is? And so Larry has to explain what germs are, which is an interesting explanation. Have you ever thought of trying to explain to someone, a non-native English speaker, what germs are?
No, because it would be hard to not sound crazy as we are going to see here.
So Larry says, okay, they're little tiny living organisms that cause sickness, disease, and death. And he says they're all over, every place. And Balky's confused. He looks around in the room and he says, are there any here right now? Larry says, you betcha. And he grabs this like can of soda. He's walking over to the couch to sit down. They're all over the place, on this table, on that couch, all over this can, which he then drinks from anyway.
Yes, he's like, whatever, there's germs on the can.
Which makes no sense.
But then takes a sip from it.
And Balky just thinks Larry's crazy. Yeah. And he looks at him. He's like, Cousin Larry? I don't see any.
Larry's trying to explain, Balky, they're tiny, they're microscopic, they travel through the air, they get into your body, they make you sick. Balky, now speaking very gently like he's talking to a patient, he goes, tell me about these invisible creatures. Do they have a leader? Clearly not taking Larry's crazy germ talk seriously. But Larry knows germs are real because he missed his 6th grade graduation. He tells Balky he missed the spelling bee and his junior prom because of germs, and he's not going to miss Bonnie Kleinschmidt. Balky says, fine. He'll go alone to explain to Twinkie in the hospital that Larry's at home hiding from little invisible things that are out to get him. And Balky hits the side of his head going, you're crazy. He just totally thinks Larry is insane. At which point Larry agrees, okay, 5 minutes, no more. And as they get up to leave the apartment, Balky grabs a magazine and smacks the table. He goes,
got the germs.
Got him. Just totally patronizing Larry. I love it. Finally, Balky is patronizing Larry.
Finally, yeah. We're finally seeing some like parody here. Next scene opens. They're at the hospital, and Balky is super impressed with American hospitals. He says, boy, American hospitals are wonderful. He's looking around. Do they keep the animals on another floor? And Larry is so accustomed to Balky's questions now that he just goes, yes.
Yeah, he does that all the time. There's no point. Just no point explaining.
Then we get a very like cheesy gag here, but it still made me laugh. Balky grabs a bedpan, those triangular kind.
No.
He puts it on his head. It's like metal. And he says, look, a Meepo's army helmet. Gross. He's wearing it on his head. Larry's like, take that off. That's not an army helmet.
Balky goes, what is it? He goes, it's not a helmet. And I was like, ew. Especially now. Listen, I was not.
Just like some random bedpan on his head. Gross.
Before 2020, I really was more like Balky. But now when I watch this, I was like, oh my God, that's gross. That's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
I wouldn't even go to the hospital. Anyways, they say hello to Twinkasetti, kind of surprise him. Twinkasetti's in the bed. He's got his leg elevated and hanging. He's reading the paper. And Twink goes, don't tell me. You're here for your lobotomy. And Balky goes, no, we didn't come for fun. We came to visit you. So funny.
I want to know what Balky thinks a lobotomy is.
Something fun, apparently. It sounds like a game. And then Larry goes, hello, Mr. Twinkasetti. Sorry about your leg. See you later. And then they just turn and leave and walk out when Twink stops them.
Twinkasetti calls them back. His leg is like slung up in this harness that's connected to a crank on the side of the bed, which I've never actually seen this set up in real life, but I see it on TV all the time.
It's old-timey. It reminded me of that scene in Airplane where he's flashing back to the hospital. And like everybody has their legs up in like a canvas.
Up in a sling.
Over
the bed.
Yeah.
So Balky goes to try to do the crank, but it's stuck. And Larry's like, just press the release. And Twink's like, no. And then hilarity ensues, some physical comedy. His leg goes flying up. Larry forcefully brings it back down. Twink said he is screaming in pain. And he's like, get out of here, get out, leave.
I love how he says get out because he sounds like a dog. He sounds like a dog bark. He's like, get out. So as they're leaving,
very Twinkacetti bark.
He's barking he looks like a little pug. Anyways, he's like a little bulldog.
Oh, he's cute.
But as they're leaving, Edwina Twinkacetti and the Twinkacetti children come in and run into Balky and Larry. And Twinkacetti,
and it's a son and a daughter, and we find out that they're named Donnie and Marie.
Of course they are. Why?
How adorable. After the Osmond siblings.
I don't think we need to explain that one.
Donnie Osmond and Marie Osmond. Anyway, yes.
The funniest thing is the boy, Donnie's wearing like a suit and a tie and a trench coat. So it's a very like Republican meets mafia look going on in the Twinkacetti family. And so Larry kneels down to say hello. He's like, oh, what a cute little girl. And the little girl sneezes right in his face.
Which serves him right for like kneeling down and being patronizing to a little girl.
Some of that,
like, oh, what a pretty little girl.
Yeah, and then she just blows one right. And some of that definitely went in his mouth. I'm pretty sure it went right in his mouth. And we took it and he goes, Marie, please cover your mouth when he sneezes. You don't want to give everybody your germs. At which point, Balky and Larry looked at her. He's like, oh, germs.
Germs.
And Larry goes, I'm out of here. They run out of the hospital.
Cut to the next morning. And Balky is at the breakfast table cutting bananas into bowls of cereal. Larry comes out. He's miserable. His nose is red. He's sneezing his head off. He sits at the table in front of his bowl of cereal, which is some kind of puffed rice cereal or something.
It's just called Puff.
Puffs.
That's the name on the box behind it. It's just Puff.
Balky greets him. He says, good morning. How are you today? And Larry goes, how am I today? Isn't it obvious how I am today? And Larry makes a big sneeze into his cereal bowl and the puffs fly all over the place. Balky says, you made a mess.
So he's blaming Balky for being sick, and it's kind of Balky's fault. It's both their faults. He goes, the minute that little brat sneezed at me, I knew I was doomed.
And Balky goes, what?
He goes, you were what? He goes, doomed.
Balky goes, doomed?
Doomed. And he just can't say the M. He does such a great, sick accent. It's definitely a skill.
I can imagine how hard it was for them to stay in character because this is so funny.
It's hilarious. His nose is all red. He's like, doomed. And then the phone rings, and this is weird. They both head for their separate phones and answer. First of all, why are there two landline old school phones in such a small apartment? Is that necessary? But it does set up for hilarious bits. Like this, when they answer the phone at the same time, Larry goes, hello? Balky goes, hello? Larry goes, who is this? He goes, this is Balky. Across the room. And he's like, well, you'll get off the phone.
And on the other end of that call is Bonnie Kleinschmidt calling about the date. We can infer from Larry's answers. Bonnie thinks Larry sounds funny. He says, no, it's just a bad connection. He does not cancel the date. He confirms that he'll pick her up at 7.
Stupid Larry.
And then he hangs up and he says, all right, I can do this. I need vitamins. I need liquids. And then he sneezes 3 times in a row. And Balky says, cousin, you need a miracle.
Right. He had an out right there. He could have canceled the date and just rescheduled
the date. But he is so not sleazy, but he is so like, I need to have this date. This is my one shot with a beautiful woman.
Plus, on principle, it's a war against germs. He's not going to let germs ruin his life yet again. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Act 2 starts back at the apartment.
Larry's in the living room at the coffee table, he's cutting up oranges, and there's like wadded up tissues all over the place. Balky comes home, enters the apartment with many brown paper bags of groceries. He got all the vitamins Larry wanted, And then he tells Larry that he sounds terrible. Larry says, "Of course I sound terrible. There's a war going on in here," pointing at his nose. Balky looks confused and tries to look up Larry's nose. And he goes, who's winning? Very innocent.
Are there people up there, cousin? Look, Larry is determined to win this battle. Like I said, this is a war with Germs. Germs made him miss his junior prom, but he's not letting him get in the way of Bonnie Clyde Schmidt. Again, Balky suggests, why don't you just call and reschedule when you're feeling better? Larry's like, oh, sure, just ask out another time. Why don't I wait for Haley's comet to fly through my living room? To which Balky responds, I had an uncle who was hit by a meteor once. Larry's like, I bet you did. Interesting science reference.
Yeah, Haley's Comet, of course, is a periodic comet that we can only see from Earth with the naked eye or a small telescope every 75 or 76 years.
He pronounced it actually different and proper. It's Haley, not Haley.
Is that how it's supposed to be pronounced?
People pronounce it Haley, but it's like Halle Berry. So it's Haley's Comet.
Mark Lynn Baker is a Yale-trained actor.
Larry's got all his vitamins. He's like, I am not giving up. He's like, I got my A, I got my B, I got my C, I got my D.
And Balky goes, put them all together. What do they spell? Abacada.
So good.
Which made me giggle. Abacada. That line was completely unnecessary. They just threw that, maybe even improvised that.
Remember the alphabet song on Sesame Street where Big Bird thinks the alphabet is one long word and he sings it, and that's what it reminded me of. Abacada.
Abacada. So Balky tells Larry, though, that if he really wants to get better, he's got to be more serious than taking pills. And so he pulls out another brown bag, and from that bag, he pulls out a whole string of garlic cloves, like in a big necklace. Some Wolfsbane, which is a little plastic baggie with orange stuff inside, and pumpkin mold, another little plastic baggie with green liquidy stuff inside.
This is interesting ingredients here. Wolfsbane makes me think of Dungeons and Dragons and spells and wizards.
Yeah, I had to look up Wolfsbane. It's a root commonly used for as an analgesic or, various ailments. Wolfsbane. I had never heard of Wolfsbane before, actually.
Well, and you know what? Garlic.
Balky calls it Wolf.
Well, yeah, he doesn't put the S in there. He calls it Wolfsbane. Garlic is very good for you also.
Garlic is very good for you. Larry, so Balky shows him all this stuff, and he's holding up the pumpkin mold, and Larry gives him the classic Larry, what is that? And Balky starts to explain how mold grows on pumpkins. Balky says, I know what that is. Why do you have it? Balky says he feels bad. Aww. He's the one who insisted Larry go to the hospital. So the least he can do is make him feel better for his date. And he says, the Wolfbane is for your runny nose. The pumpkin mold is for your cough. And the garlic just makes you feel good all over. And he cradles the garlic.
Garlic is sexy.
And Larry says, and I bet it keeps away vampires. And Balky says, well, that's a side benefit.
That is a side benefit also. You don't have to worry about
vampires. Makes me think how many vampires they have in Mypos.
Probably tons. It's close to Transylvania from what I heard. They're trade partners.
It's not at all.
Larry is not interested in Balky's Myposian remedies. Tells him, leave me alone. And goes back to counting out his vitamin pills one at a time.
Balky keeps trying. He's determined to make him well. And he explains the garlic, Wolfbane, and pumpkin mold are just temporary relief measures while he prepares what's in the contents of another bag that he has, which are the ingredients for a secret Mypos cure. And he tells Larry, I really can make you feel better, and the secret Mypos cure is the only thing that will make you well. And Larry is kind of a jerk, and he's very doubtful, and he scoffs in his Larry way, and he says, a cure? Balky, I have a cold. All of medical science has been trying for centuries to find a cure for the common cold and have failed. Now you're telling me that Mypos, a country with one phone, a country where the foremost spectator sport is spitting for distance, tiny little Mypos has the cure? To which Balky simply says, yes. And Larry goes, I'll stick with my modern medicine. Thank you. What a jerk.
Okay, he is a jerk, but
He's
2 points here.
Such a jerk.
First of all, we find out so much about Mypos, so they have all that stuff, plus add on to that one car, one 7-Eleven, one hospital.
Yes.
Now we have a running inventory of items on Mypos.
They don't need more than one hospital because they have a cure to the common cold.
But then my other point is Larry does have a point, a little bit, to be skeptical.
Then we have a small little bit of physical comedy. Larry tosses back a whole handful of pills and he immediately starts choking and spitting them out. He got them all out. He's still coughing a little bit. Balky just smacks him on the back of the head and one final pill comes spewing out of his mouth. Pretty funny gag.
Those pills aren't going to do anything, Larry. We cut to later the evening as Balky's in the kitchen brewing up his Myposian cure. Larry is doing a thing that a lot of people have tried. You probably can relate to this. He's under a blanket with a steamer humidifier inhaling vapor, and it's not working.
He's still sneezing under that blanket. Have you ever done that when you have a cold? I don't think I've ever done that.
I feel like this does not work. Why do people do this? Who told you? Who started
I feel like
this
is another thing that I've seen a lot on TV, but I've never actually seen anyone do it.
It's you do the thing where you put Vicks Vapo Rub on your chest and then put it over humidifier. I may have tried it once. I feel like, but it doesn't work.
Supposed to open your sinuses. Anyway, it doesn't work. Balky comes over holding the garlic necklace. He pulls the blanket off Larry and he says, "You've wasted a whole day with this hocus pocus.
Hocus pocus.
Are you ready to try the garlic necklace now?" And he puts the garlic string around Larry's neck. Larry goes, "Get away from me. It smells terrible." Balky goes, "You see, it's working already."
See, you can smell.
Fair point.
Larry can smell it. Larry is on edge at this point. He has an hour and a half to get better before the biggest date of his life with Bonnie Kleinschmidt. But he realizes at this point he is not going to make it. And he's kind of given up and pitying himself and defeated. And he said the Germs have won again. No problem for Larry Appleton as he collapses over on the sofa and starts crying silently to himself.
Yeah, Larry's giving up. He tells Balky, he's given up. He tells Balky, "Call Bonnie Kleinschmidt. Tell her I died in my sleep. Oh, and tell her I was rich. Why should she be happy?"
That's hilarious. He not only wants to ruin her good day too.
And so he's given up. He tells Balky it's over. He's tried everything. And now Balky gets super upset because, of course, Larry hasn't tried everything.
No, he hasn't.
And he starts yelling at him and lecturing him. And he says, "I make the secret Mypos cure for you. It's finished. It's sitting right there in the kitchen in case anybody should want it." and Larry's still, at this point, he's tried everything, is still not having it. He's not believing it. He says, "I have to pick her up in an hour and a half." Balky says, "It works in 20 minutes. And he still doesn't believe. He says, "But Balky, that makes no sense. It goes against 200 years of medical science." To which Balky says, "Fine, I'll just flush it down the toilet then."
That's it. That's the moment Larry finally gives in. He's at his wit's end. He'll try it. Why not? He's tried everything else. He grabs Balky by the chest forcefully. He goes, "Give me the Mypos cure." And of course, Balky's going to give him a hard time. He's like, "Oh, give you the Mypos cure. You who make fun of my country's medicine all day long. You who thinks little tiny people are fighting up your nose. Give you the Mypos cure." He thinks there's people fighting up his nose.
Balky, in fact, takes it so far. He makes Larry say, by the way, during this scene, they're in that classic position that we see a lot, facing each other very close, with one grasping the other by the chest of their shirt.
In each other's faces.
Yeah.
Trying not to crack up.
Now Balky makes, exactly. Now Balky makes Larry say the magic words, and the magic words are, "I believe."
Oh, I believe.
But he wants him to say it like he means it. And Larry finally obliges, and Balky runs to the kitchen to get the cure. And Larry says, "That's okay. When I'm well, I'll renounce it all." Balky comes back with the cure. He goes, "I heard that."
I guess I heard that, by the way. And he's
anyway, he comes back with this jar, a little jar full of black liquid.
It looks like iced coffee, really.
It does. Now it looks like iced coffee. Back then, we didn't have such things like iced coffee. He warns Larry that it tastes and looks terrible. Larry looks at it and gives us a classic, "Oh my Lord." He says, "Is there eye of newt or bat's wing in there?" Balky says, "Well, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. That's for back pain. This is fish parts and herbs."
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
Eye of newt and bat's wings. Of course they're going to use that. That's the wrong remedy, Larry. Don't you know anything? Balky says, "Oh, I'll be right back." He forgot something. He runs back to the kitchen. And as Balky's in the kitchen, Larry picks up the jar, takes a look at it, and chugs the whole black, nasty thing down. And to which Balky returns. Balky is shocked. He goes, what did you do? Larry goes, I drank it. You're right. It's disgusting.
And Balky is in shock because he tells Larry that jar was enough for a whole village. And then he shows him what he brought back from the kitchen, and he puts it in his face, which is just a teaspoon. And he says, this.
Oh, no.
This was how much you were supposed to take.
So funny.
And
the audience at this point is like dying because they just realized what Larry realized, that he's in trouble.
And Balky's like, obviously knows what a big deal this is, but Larry still doesn't get it. He says, so it's just herbs and fish parts. A little is good, a lot is better. And Balky puts his fingers in his mouth, and he's very nervous. And he goes, oh.
So Larry stands up and goes, how long is it going to take to work? Balky goes, that amount should work pretty fast. Larry says he doesn't feel anything, and then immediately his face just drops and goes numb, and his eyes kind of roll back, and he zombies out, and he turns his head towards Balky, and he goes, Balky, I can see through you. At which point, Balky just grabs him and tosses him over. Larry falls stiff onto the sofa, and he covers him with a blanket and puts the garlic necklace around his neck. And Larry's like in open-eyed coma at this point. Yeah, he's like in a zombie coma. I love that line, I can see through you. It reminds me of The Simpsons. Remember when Lisa first tries Indian food? It's super spicy. And Homer's like, how's the food, Lisa? And she goes, I can see through time. It's just so spicy.
Like burning.
It's like, I bet my Wookiee. Oh, we could do Simpsons lines for hours. Anyways, we're at Act 3 now.
Act 3. We're still in the apartment. Larry is asleep in the same position on the couch that we last saw him, but his eyes are closed now.
And, it's still nighttime outside.
Still nighttime outside.
It was.
Balky is, curiously, in a different outfit.
Balky's wearing different clothes, yes.
He's dusting the apartment, and we start to hear Larry moan and groan, and he opens his eyes. He's groaning. And Balky runs over and he says, oh, are you awake now? Larry sits up and he says, whoa, that was some potent stuff. And Balky says, I bet you're feeling like a million digdas.
Oh, more digdas. This is another digdas reference.
I want to know what the exchange rate for digdas was in 1986.
The digdas to dollars, it's probably like Canadian dollars to American. It probably doesn't not worth as much. Also, notice Larry now seems to have a 5 o'clock shadow on his face for some reason.
Yep.
That's weird. It's weird.
And again, Balky's wearing different clothes, so something's up. Larry says he feels fantastic, better than he's ever felt in his entire life. He says,
wow.
Balky, that is a miracle cure.
Wow.
He stands up, and Balky immediately sits him back down again. There's something we got to talk about.
But Larry cuts him off. He goes, I have 15 minutes to get ready for my big date with Bonnie Kleinschmidt. He gets up and continues to cut off Balky, who clearly Balky is trying to tell him something. Larry's like, Balky, you should bottle that stuff. An herbal medicine that can cure a person in less than an hour. Then he notices something, and it's the newspaper on the table, and it's very thick. He goes, why is the evening paper so thick? Balky tells him, it's the Sunday's paper. Larry goes, Sunday? I've been asleep for 24 hours?
Balky goes, well, actually, it's Tuesday. I just thought you might like the Sunday funnies.
Oh, no.
Tuesday. Larry freaks out in the classic Larry panic. What? I have been asleep for 3 days.
Oh, God.
And Balky says, well, if you had just taken a teaspoonful, you would have just taken a 20-minute nap. But you had to gobble down the whole thing, so you took 216 little 20-minute naps. I counted.
Oh, God. Then he got knocked out for 3 days, and Larry's like, oh, I missed my date with Bonnie Kleinschmidt, to which Balky goes, oh, we got to talk about that, too. Uh-oh.
Balky tells Larry that Bonnie called. Uh-huh. She was very excited about seeing Bruce Springsteen.
Sure.
And Balky did exactly what Larry told him to do. I told her you were dead. And then I told her you were rich. And then I took her out myself.
Oh, Larry goes, you took out my date?
And Balky says, well, of course I did. You were dead.
Okay, hold on. Baller move by Balky. First of all, I wouldn't...
Well, they're both 2 young men, after all.
Yeah, and look, it's a nice young lady. He didn't want her to be disappointed. It was important. So, but does this not cross some bro code? I don't know.
No, he knew because he made the remedy. He knew that Larry was going to be asleep for a while.
He ain't getting up. But like, you know what? It turns out Larry didn't miss anything because Balky tells him when they got to the concert, Bonnie ran off with someone else who had front row tickets.
He was humiliated. Oh, poor sweet Balky. He was also humiliated.
Bruce Springsteen had the flu, never showed up. So there was no Bruce, and Bonnie was going to ditch you, Larry, anyways.
Yes.
So he saved you from a lot of humiliation.
So now we get to lesson time. And we know it's lesson time because the classic lesson time
the music changes. Yes, you hear the music cue in the background.
And Larry says, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I guess I've been a little rude, insensitive, inconsiderate. Stop me anytime here.
Balky goes,
no, you're doing fine.
But Larry's lesson is he does realize Balky had his best interests at heart. He wanted to help.
And Balky realizes that he shouldn't have forced the me-post cure on Larry, even though it was the best thing for him.
You should have forced it on him. Maybe that's that lesson's
Balky's
misplaced.
lesson is not as poignant here. Larry goes, let's not fight about it. We each have our own ways. And Balky agrees. And he says, you say tomato? And I say tomato.
That's so funny. And of course, Larry just goes with it. He goes, good point.
Good point.
But
yeah,
Balky
Larry's like already so soon over trying to explain things to Balky.
love how Balky got the tomato thing wrong.
You say tomato and I say tomato. The concert, of course, has been rescheduled. Balky gives Larry the tickets for the rescheduled concert and says, you can go then with Bonnie Kleinschmidt.
Yeah, but wait, Larry has another chance with Bonnie Kleinschmidt at Bruce. I don't know if you should give Bonnie Kleinschmidt a second chance, Larry.
And Larry agrees with you. He says, well, I'd rather go with someone who knows Larry Appleton, someone who likes Larry Appleton. And Balky goes, someone who's related to Larry Appleton. And he gives the ticket to Balky and says, but before he gives the ticket to Balky, he snatches it back. He says, wait, you spent the last 3 days taking care of me, didn't you? And Balky says, I dusted you every morning.
That's so cute.
Gives him the ticket and everything's almost fine and wrapped up neatly, except right at the end, Balky does a big achoo.
Oh no.
And they both look at each other in panic, and Balky screams, germs! And Larry puts the garlic necklace around Balky's neck and roll credits.
And they all have a good laugh. I thought it was sweet. That ending was very sweet when he's
sweet.
I want someone who knows and likes Larry. And the fact that Balky probably turned him like a nurse, old folks home. You got to turn him and dust him
every morning.
Make sure he's not choking on his tongue. He's unconscious for 3 days.
Yeah, like did he not go to the bathroom for 3 days?
The cure probably suppresses that. It's all worked in. This episode first aired, Sophia. This is kind of an interesting date. October 15th, 1986.
You know what that was?
What was that?
That was the day before my 7th birthday.
Oh, and I was, I was
7 or 6, one of those.
I think it was 7 because I was 10.
Yeah, the day before my 7th birthday.
Some extra cast. Of course, we got Bronson Pinchot, Mark Lynn Baker. Extra cast this episode. You had Ernie Sabella as Mr. Twincasetti. Yeah, the return of Belita Moreno, hilarious, as Edwina Twincasetti. And then the kids, Erica Gale playing Marie Twincasetti and Matthew Licht playing Donnie Twincasetti. Now, Matthew is the brother of Jeremy Licht, who is a regular on the series Valerie that later became the Hogan Family. And it was also an earlier Miller Boyette TV show before Perfect Strangers. And Matthew also made an appearance on Valerie. I remember Valerie. And I believe Jason Bateman was on that show.
Okay.
And his sister was on Family Ties.
Now, we don't learn anything about Larry's taste in women because we never see Bonnie Kleinschmidt.
I think that's the most hilarious thing is we never see Bonnie
We know she's some kind of like beauty contest person.
I think he's got a type. She probably looked a lot like Jennifer. Like blonde, big hair, pageant queen. Also, we got a returning trope of Larry trying to explain something new to Balky who doesn't understand this time. It's germs. Which we'll get a little bit more about that in Perfect Strangers today. And then the other trope I love always is Balky making it hard on Larry after Larry spends the whole time making fun of me post stuff.
Yeah.
And then he
just
needs it.
Dumping on it.
Yeah.
And then he comes around. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
About this episode. this episode made me think a lot about cold remedies and conventional sort of CVS cold remedy. I think about it as CVS versus Whole Foods, right? Like the conventional pharmaceutical ones, or the ones that you hear from people's grandmothers or different cultures, or people are like, I swear by this. This will help you. Go to the store, get this, this, and this, and do this.
It's interesting because there are, like, he brings in an Eastern remedy, but every country, every ethnicity has one. Every culture has an ethnic Eastern remedy. We're Pakistani, so what I remember is our mom going, "Oh, drink this with ginger and garlic and honey and a bunch of other crazy things, and turmeric and tamarind and whatever they put in there."
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those crazy remedies.
I have one. I don't remember who even told me, but at some point someone told me about this, and I swear it works. I call it a lemon shot. You squeeze fresh lemon juice, and then you add some boiling water, just a little bit, like up to 3 or 4 ounces, just to make it hot. And then you put in a heaping spoon of honey, like the good kind.
Yeah.
And if you're really daring, you could add cayenne in there. Cayenne pepper, and then you just take it like a shot, and I swear it does wonders.
Or you could just go the old school route and just drink booze. Just a shot of booze.
It'll kill all the microbes.
Do the real lemon shot. Yes, that 100 proof alcohol will kill all those germs.
That gets us to Perfect Strangers today, because today, if this story were happening now, what do we do today? We all go to the internet, right? And we're looking up, like, what are other remedies to solve this? I do it all the time.
There still isn't a solid cold cure, right? It's still like 34 years later. Does anything really work? Because part of me is just like, you have to just let it run its course.
Lemon shots work.
Or just ride it out. Let it run its course. You don't really have to, you can drink chicken soup, make yourself feel better. And I think largely it's stuff that just makes you feel better.
I would love to know from listeners what your favorite traditional home remedies are for when you're not feeling well, when you have a cold or flu. Do you go to CVS or do you go to Whole Foods to collect ingredients and brew up a special potion? Or is it a mix of both?
The other thing I thought of for Perfect Strangers today while watching this episode, and this is obviously a huge one, it's where this episode's releasing 2021, and I'm sure things will be the same, but going to the hospital, anywhere you go now, obviously wear a mask, right? He went to the hospital having just wore a mask. He wouldn't have got sick. That girl sneezed in her own mask.
Or if the girl was wearing a mask.
And it's funny, like, you've seen people in other countries wearing masks way before this, and we should have gotten the hint, and maybe we should have been doing this this whole time way before.
I will say that a few years back when I was traveling a lot for work, I got very, very sick from a full flight where people were all coughy and sneezy. And from that moment on, I've always covered, even before this pandemic, wrapped a scarf around my face or worn a mask on airplanes always.
So I think if you travel a lot, you get it. You understand it more. I have a story. Earlier this year in January, the wife and I, Jesse, we took a vacation, which we rarely do, to New Orleans. It was tons of fun, but on the way back, we had separate seats because we couldn't find seats together. And there was a girl sitting next to me, a young woman. She was clearly sniffly when the flight started. Oh. I could hear her, right? During the flight, she just sneezes in the air.
Oh, gross.
I literally, Sophia, I could see the droplets in the light right now. I still remember it. And at that point, I'm belted in my seat. I can't do anything. What am I going to do? I can't run like a maniac. I'm belted and run out of the...
I'll tell you what you're supposed to do. I learned this too because I got sick on the plane. According to the internet, and this is another thing I do every time now, you point the the blower thing above your head?
Yeah.
You point it a little bit in front of you.
Oh, so it blows it away.
It blows all the things away.
Well, anyways, so we landed the next day. Within 24 hours, I had the flu, and I never get sick. I'd never get flu. I'd never get sick.
I remember that.
This year, everybody at work, and the day we landed was the day the coronavirus story broke internationally.
Oh, no. And I was like, here you are with the flu.
Oh, no. I was like, what did I get? Where has this woman next to me? Where did she come from?
Yeah.
I was freaking out. Gross. Luckily, it was just influenza B. It may have been COVID. I don't know. They weren't testing for it for me in January. But so now I'm super aware, and as well as we all should.
Yeah. And now this story wouldn't even happen now because now forevermore, nobody is ever going to be that close to another person, especially a little girl where they don't know where she's been.
There will be seats between everyone, social distance.
We're never going to be close enough to get sneezed on.
The other thing I wanted to mention I thought was interesting that in the context of 2020 and this year and 2021 is that, the trope of Larry trying to explain something to Balki and Balki, he doesn't understand it. In this case, he doesn't understand like that germs are little tiny things because it comes out of ignorance, right? Whatever. But in 2020, this whole thing takes on a whole new context. If you follow the news,
I don't know if it comes out of ignorance. Let's go back for a minute. I don't think it's ignorance. The way I see it is that because I've lived among other cultures around the world, it's different cultures' understandings of what illness is and what makes you sick, right?
Okay.
So they might have a different understanding of what germs are, but not
a medical scientific
framed
kind of
like
thing.
This, like little things that live.
Yeah.
I remember when I was living in Central Asia in this village in Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, people believe that the cold wind or drinking cold things just make you sick.
Yeah.
And it can't be the germs that people are passing from sharing things or whatever. But it's just like, oh, you got a cold? I told you not to drink that cold water. And a lot of cultures are like that. Cold things make you sick.
People do it here. They're like, oh, you're going to go in the rain, you're going to get a cold. But like how? Right? Because you're wet.
Well, it like weakens your immune system and stuff like that. But so there
but if
are
you don't
some
dry off, like you'll be fine. How's the
some
rain
aspects of truth to every theory that's out there. But
I'm talking specifically about like, you have the anti-vaxxers and the conspiracy theorists.
Germs,
and so if this episode happened now, Balki would be the crazy conspiracy theorist, that says that this isn't real, this doesn't exist or something.
Germs aren't real. Yeah, that's true. He would be an anti-masker.
He would be an anti-vaxxer, anti-masker. Absolutely. That's what I'm getting at. If this is perfect strangers today.
And Mipos would have a cure for COVID.
Yes, this would be the cure. Yes, the controversial cure for COVID from Mipos.
Herbs and fish parts, or it might be Eye of Newt.
That one definitely you need Eye of Newt and bat wings. Definitely. So anyways, this episode, I couldn't wait to talk about Perfect Strangers today because the whole time I'm like, ew, germs. Ew, he put the bedpan on his head. What are you doing?
Gross. That part is gross.
And let me tell you, I've taken our mother to several hospital doctor appointments. So now it's all very good. They take your temperature right away. Everybody's wearing a mask. There's a hand sanitizer everywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take her in, but she's got to see the doctor. And it is hospitals are where germs are, but they're good at separating everything. So it's been all right. Sophia,
nice.
we got a couple of shout outs from some listeners.
Shouts out.
Yeah. Believe it or not, people are listening and they are enjoying.
Amazing.
From our Facebook group listener, you can join the Dance of Joy podcast Facebook group. It's a place where you can join the conversation, leave us your thoughts so we can all get to meet each other. Listener Rabia commented on episode 4. She said, $50 in 1986 is about $118.79 in 2020. I'm loving the nerding out on this podcast.
Yeah, that was in response to a previous episode where they're betting $50.
But also the price of a date.
The baseball, yeah.
And then Twinkie said that was the price of a date. Remember when the dating episode?
That's right. Fun fact, we are talking about a show about cousins, and this listener, Rabia, is in fact our real life cousin.
She is our cousin. So it's great that the cousins can listen, and thanks for
commenting. At least our cousins are listening to our show.
Somebody, who else is listening? People from the Perfect Strangers Online PS I Love You Facebook
Amazing
group. Shout out. Pam Hitchcock commented, I'm loving the Dance of Joy podcast. You and Sophia, you do an awesome job. I look forward to it every week. Oh my God,
thank you so much, Pam Hitchcock. That means a lot. We're
really
glad you're enjoying the show.
Well, we got to continue popping them out every week now, Sophia. Pam Hitchcock's looking forward.
We got to keep going, and I'm up for it if you are. Next week, we have a show called Lifesavers.
So usually I watch ahead by the time I record. This time I did not, and I don't remember this episode. How would you tease this episode? What happens?
It's a hard tease. Somebody saves somebody's life.
Oh.
And then that somebody feels indebted.
Okay, I thought it was either about like the Mint Lifesavers or like the flotation devices. It's about neither. I was incorrect. Okay, right. Can't wait because, again, I don't remember this episode at all. It's going to be like watching it the first time.
It's going to be amazing.
Very excited.
If you are still enjoying our show, we hope you are. Please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. You can visit danceofjoypod.com for all the links to all the shows. You can send us an email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com, or you can leave us a voice message. There's a button on the bottom of our site that you can just press and leave us a voice message.
It's on the bottom right, and it's a little microphone. But the important thing is, listener, visit danceandjoypod.com for everything. There's links to all the podcast platforms we're on, all of our socials, how to get in touch. And then the other most important thing is share the show with a friend. Spread it around to people you think should get turned on to Perfect Strangers, because the show is still solid 34 years later. Still very good. Turn on friends to the show and turn on friends to our show, and we would appreciate it.
And now we are so happy we do the dance of joy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy.
Hey, 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 hey.